our computer here, as it happens, we have a shortcut to it, I believe, on the desktop somewhere here. Let's see, SPSS, there it is. So I'll double click on that. If worst comes to worst, you can go down here to the start button and you can go over to programs and you can, all programs, and you can track it down that way. I'll do that just so you guys can see me do that. It happens to be marketed by IBM, so you might actually see it under an I, a folder called I for IBM. Okay, and I'm gonna, oops. Okay, and I'm gonna open the program itself, not all that other stuff. Okay, it takes a second or two to start up. On Macs, it takes a little bit longer to even get going. And when it does come up, I think from last week probably you'll remember, it kind of looks like a spreadsheet. It doesn't care about that. If I wanted to start recording age and gender, well, first of all, number one, I already have titles up here: name, type, width, label, and so on and so forth. The reason why that's up there is because I'm in one of two views called the variable view. The other view is the data view. That's actually the data that the variable view describes to you what's in that data, how that data is structured. So really right now, I just want to be in the data view. So let's say I'm going to go into this box number 1, and I'm going to use, that box is going to represent gender. Okay, now, instead of and then the next column, I'm going to put age, right? That's going to be second column. So maybe as we go around, I can take about 10 people to start with you. And you're a male, so we put a, did I say one is female? Or so that's 2. And like I said, you can make up an age. Okay, good. Oops, I put 25. That's okay. Look, you look younger. Next. Female or male? Okay, 1. 26. Boy, everybody's 26. Maybe I'll be 27. Okay, next. Okay, 1. Yes. Like I said, you can lie. I'm not even looking. Hang on a second. It was a 10. Okay, 46, did we say? Is that what I said? Was it 26 again? I'll leave it the way it is. I don't really care. Next. That's a 1. Okay. Next. You know, that's always the problem here at Hunter. Okay, go ahead. This is the nature of the beast here. Go ahead. Okay. How about one more male? Male, 2. Okay. And? Okay, 20. Good. Okay, good. Let's stop there. I've input this data, right? In the first column, I put something that represented gender. In the second column, I put a numerical variable. Okay, so now, if I look in here, I say to myself, okay, notice what it did up here, where it had a little faint VAR for variable before. It actually put in a VA in dark letters, VAR 00001 and VAR 0002. I didn't give it and you literally put the data in SPSS this way. Just type it in. Now, tell me something. 6 cases. Patient, 6 students, whatever. Right? So students are not very much different than patients. columns represent variables. If we were going to add another variable, it would be in the column. If we were going to add another student, it would be in the column. You know? Okay, so let's go into the variable view. And in the variable view, we can see that, oh, well, the name of the variable is what it assigned. It's numeric. It says numeric. We type in number. It sees that as right now. Now, it doesn't know really what kind of variable it is down here. It's waiting for us to tell it what kind of variable it is down here by measure. Okay, but we're going to get to that in a second. First, let's start by telling it, giving it a variable name that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to type in gender for the variable name. Okay, that makes sense. Rules on the variable name. There's a limit, but in the current versions of SPSS, it used to be the limit was like, I don't know, nine characters or something like that. Nowadays, you can have very long variable names if you want, but you can't have, and you can have certain special characters like underscores and stuff like that, but you can't have. Now start with a letter and the alphabet. Okay, so now no spaces again. Okay, so now for age, I'm just going to put in age, AGE. Okay. Okay, so now that's got variable name. If I switch back to my data view, you can see that it's changed the gender and age at the top of it. Well, that's not a very descriptive name, right? I'm going to go across here. And for gender, we're only using one character. It gave us a width of 8 characters up to 2 decimal. You notice that it gave us automatically assigned decimal points. We really don't care about that. It assigned 2 decimal points, 8 character width. It didn't assign any values to it. It didn't tell it what to do with missing values. Missing values, usually, if you don't tell it what to do with them, it just ignores them. It says it can have 8 columns in that vertical column that made the width. It said align it to the right, right? Nothing really unusual. But over here in measure, see in measure, we're going to tell it, and even though it's a number, 1 or 2, it actually represents male or female, so it's a nominal variable. And for our second variable, age, even though it's a numerical variable, it's a number, but it also happens to be a numerical variable. SPSS calls numerical variable scales or scalar. Okay, so why are these guys leaving the room? What's going on back there? Okay, I'll have to check on that in a second. So at any rate, age, I want to make sure things are working. So age and age is a scalar variable. Now on the nominal variables, there is a location here called values. If I click into values, this little blue box appears. If I click on that, it opens up a table where I can tell it what those values mean. For instance, 1, what did we assign to 1? Female? And I can say add, and 2 represents a male. And click add also. And then I can say OK. So now if I go back to my my data view, right, I still see 1s and 2s. But if I go up here to view and go down here to value labels, see that's a toggle. Anytime you click on something, turns it on, click on it again, turns it off. It's called a toggle. If I click on that, it toggles it, and now it substitutes what those female, when we say 2, we mean male. Okay, and the numbers are just going to stay what they are. So I'm going to go back here. So I'm going to go into values here. Does it make any sense to assign values? Wait, it doesn't really represent anything other than that. Okay, so now the only other thing that we really need to know about this right now is gender is kind of a sloppy thing. Like I might put gender of student. Okay, so what's going to happen now, put an extra Y in there for some reason. What's going to happen now is anytime I print a graph, instead of using age, maybe I want to put in there, I'm going to click in there for label for age. I'm going to say age in years. And that'll substitute that when we produce any sort of data. And that's it. Encoded this data in SPSS. Now, let's say I'm going to go back here. And I want to, I may be adding some more data to this tomorrow. I want to save it. So I'm going to go up here and say File. I'm going to say Save As. Okay, and I'm going to create a, it's going to save it as a file that has a .sav on it. I'm going to save it to our desktop here. And I'll give it the file Session2. Okay, now as soon as I did that, another window came up. Another window came up because I just did an operation that SPSS wants to remember. Okay, the operation I did was I saved a file called Session2 to users/AV. That's apparently the user logon here is AV on the desktop for that user, session2.sav. And SPSS by default compresses it because you're used to working with very big files and saving a little bit of room. So this page that you our data file is closed, right? I'm sorry, it's not closed. It's still open. We haven't closed it. We just saved it. Okay. So it's open in the background here. In fact, if I go up here to Window, I can see that there's more than one window open right now. There's a session2.sav, which is our data file. And now there's a second window called Output. What happens is anytime you do anything in SPSS, it stores that output on the second window. And every time I do an operation, it just adds to the box. One after the other. And that's what you do statistics, you do some other analysis. If you save a file, that's all recorded on this output file. So now if I go here and I say, let's close this output file. Let's see. I'll go to File and Close. Okay. Save contents of output viewer. Didn't say anything about later on. I'm going to say no for now. Okay. My data file. So now I have to go here and I have to save my data file separately. Or the last thing I did was save it, so chances are it'll just let me close it. If I hadn't saved it recently, it won't let me close it. In fact, it won't let me close it now. Okay, I can close it this way. Okay, now SPSS, let's see, it's gone completely. Okay, it's closed. Let me close it. If you save it, available to you. Now, I think on the desktop we should have that file here. Here's Session2. So I'm going to reopen that for a second. Okay, it's going to open SPSS again. I'm just using that as a shortcut. The other way you can work with files in SPSS, you can open the file, or you can go to File, Open, Data, and navigate. Okay, in this case, I opened it that way. If you want to open another file, Open, Data. Notice there's four kinds of windows you can have. Data, syntax, output, and script. Syntax and script are kind of similar, so I wouldn't worry about the differences there. But you're mainly concerned about data, syntax, and output right now. So I want to open a data file. So browser will open up so I can see other files that are available. For instance, here's one that somebody put here before. This happens to be on the desktop. I can open that. I can have unless you've saved your stuff. So here's another data file that happens to be on here. Okay, good. So we got to look at how to create an SPSS data file and how to open an existing SPS data file. Let me just go back here and see where we are. So how many of you guys right? You got SPSS open? Okay, any problems so far? No? Excellent. Okay, so now we talked about the different windows. The data window has two forms, data and variable. Alpha window. Now, we didn't talk about syntax window. I mentioned that there's another window in there that's sneaking around. Okay, let me show you what that window does. Where it is? Where is it? I closed it, I guess. Did I close it? No, I didn't close it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Yep, that's another program. How many of you guys use at work, use SAS by any chance? Okay, and let me try this again. Okay, and there's 3 windows open in the background. Let's get ours. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick operation here, and we'll see the output. As soon as I do this operation, don't worry about what I'm doing here. We'll get to this in more detail. I'm going to go into descriptives. I'm going to tell it I want to find descriptives for age, and I'm going to say OK. Okay, it's going to calculate mean and standard deviation and so on and so forth. I don't see it. Something happened. I don't see where it is. We go to Window. It created a new output window, and it summarized what it did. It opened the file session2, which it found in users AV on the desktop. The data set was called dataset1. It said, okay, now that we got the file, let's see, activate dataset1 and run descriptive variables for the variable called age. Okay, and that includes statistics for a mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum. So this whole section here is a script. It's a instructions for the machine to run a particular. Use this script to run that operation by just quick menus, but as it happens for this particular example, but sometimes it can get a little tedious. So that scripting is a pretty powerful thing. And not only that, but sometimes there are functions. So what did it do? What it did was it calculated the number of people that were in this study was 6. The minimum age was 20. The maximum age was 46. The average age was 29. And the standard deviation for the ages was 18. Simple enough. Okay, and as we do other operations, if I decide I want to do a graph, and again, we're gonna do a more elaborate example of how we're going to do this. If we wanted to do a graph, it would create that table or graph and add it to us. I went to, well, we're going to go in more detail. I went to graph, legacy dialogues, bar graph, right? I said simple. Okay, only one variable, so I said simple. And I said define. And I told it I want gender in the on my category, on my. It's going to give me a bars with the number of females, number of males. And I said, okay. And in fact, if I do it again, it'll do it again. And notice each time you do it, it just adds it. There's a couple couple of ways you could deal with that. One way is to just go up here and say save as, right? And it'll let you say, you can give it a name, and it's going to save it as a .spv. That's a Another way you could save it is you could say to yourself, you know, I need that table and I need that bar graph, but I need them somewhere. You can highlight the table, you can right click on it, say copy, and now you can take it. That's another way you can save your information. You can do the same thing with graphs. Right click, copy, and then you can paste. We'll talk about that in more detail as we move forward. Now notice that if you're doing a lot of analyses, you can wind up with a long, it's almost like, you know, like those adding machines with the paper. Remember those? That you don't see those around too much anymore. But the adding machine with the paper tapes on it and stuff like that. When I was at a store using that thing all day long, pretty soon it's got 8 miles of paper, right? So instead of going back through the 8 miles of paper, if you're doing a lot of analyses, you actually have an index here where you can actually jump to where that particular analysis was on the left-hand side. Want to go back to the top? Brings you back up to the top. Powerful, pretty simple. Okay, let's see if we got any problems here online. Okay. Uh-oh, static gets really bad. Okay, how are you guys doing online now? Are you still with us? Hello, guys online. Are you still with us? Oh, okay, good. Okay, static is intermittent, probably when I rub against this thing. Okay, I'll try and avoid that. Okay, good. So now, let's take a look at the next thing we want to do with SPSS. I'm going to minimize this for now. Okay. Oop. Oh, another person that said that. Maybe I should have held on to that other mic, eh? Maybe I should turn down the volume. Maybe that'll help. Let's see if I can't get to. That's the output volume. Is that any better? How about that? Somebody online, let me know if that's a little bit better. Okay. All right. Maybe it's a volume issue. Okay. We'll turn down the volume, see if that, so far no static. Okay, good. I guess it was a volume issue. Good. Okay. So let's take a look. Now let's go up into our next portion of this. And let's start taking a look at the various menus and other operations that we have for this program. And I want to, but it's pretty jumpy. Enable. Okay, good. Okay, that's a little easier to scroll through. Okay, let's take a quick look at these menus that we have here. Just so we'll run through them quickly, and then we'll actually put them to work. Okay, so let's take a look at these tables. We have file, obviously. That's where we're going to open and close our files. We're going to save stuff, import stuff, export stuff, and so on and so forth. Edit has a number of functions. Edit allows you to insert cases, insert variables. It kind of automates the process. You know, you can, just like in Excel, you can add rows or columns and so on and so forth. You can search for data, and you can actually, you know, find and replace data if it's if something that you have to correct. Okay, and you've made a lot of mistakes in many places. View is something that gives you an opportunity to take a look at how the data is formatted. You can turn your value labels on and off. You can add and remove the grid lines. You can change fonts and so on and so forth. You can even edit the menu and maybe remove some of the options on the menu. Data gives you an opportunity to sort by different cases, by cases. In other words, if you wanted the youngest age at the top, oldest age at the bottom, and so on and so forth, sort the actual variables themselves. If you want age at one end and smoking status because it's an S at the other end, you can do that, or smoker, or for any other reasons that you might want. You can transpose them. You can do all sorts. You can manipulate the variables. Transform. Now this is an important one. We're going to be using this a bit. Transform allows you to convert data from one form to another. For instance, let's say that you have a variable that identifies ethnicity, and you want to have, and that variable has 6 different values for different ethnicities. So you want to take ethnicity 1 and compare it to all the others. So you want a variable that has ethnicity 1 and then 2 other ethnicities. You want a variable that is 1. This is what's up. You can transform that variable from where the new variable has the same value. Everybody had a 1 in the first variable and now it's 1 in the second variable. Everybody that had any other value is 2. That's one way you might want to change it. Another way you might want to change things is you might want to recategorize. You might want to recode a numerical variable into a category. Let's say you have a variable for height and for weight. I can say the new variable is so that's pretty powerful stuff. So you'll be able to use that later on. The analyze is where we actually do all of the functions of the stuff. We actually do our statistical analysis, our data organization, our tables, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what do we have under here, under analyze? We have reports. Okay, I won't worry about that too much for now. That's mostly just generating some output based on the code book, the variables, and so on and so forth. Now, descriptive statistics, we already started to take a look at that. Descriptive statistics, we have a lot of options here. We have something called frequencies. Okay, what kind of variables are we interested in frequencies for? Categorical variables, right? Frequencies is just the number of that group, right? So for gender, one number. For hair color, one number of redheads, blondes, and so on and so forth. Okay, if I go a little further, I go into descriptives. Descriptives really means means, medians, and so on and so forth. And what kind of variables are we interested in? 1.73 male females doesn't make any sense, right? We're not interested in the averages of the 1s and 2s there, if that's the way we've described it. Now, descriptives, that gives us a certain amount of information. We saw it only gave us a few bits of information. There's another one here that's a little lower called explore. And explore is the same thing as the script. It gives us the same basic information as descriptives, but you can expand on it. You can actually in descriptives. Okay, but it's still descriptive statistics. Explore is just another more involved way of getting descriptive statistics. Crosstabs. Crosstabs is basically imagine crosstabs. You have rows intersecting tables, kind of a I guess you'd say. You put things into rows and tables. So usually the things that you organize in rows or tables are things that you count, right? Like for instance, you might want to know in rows how many males have diabetes or don't have diabetes, how many females have diabetes, don't have diabetes. Those are both categorical variables. So the crosstabs, you usually count them, and you're comparing rows, one set of variables, one variable, to columns, another variable, both of them categorical variables. Let me try and make more sense to you. when we actually do it. Okay, so for now, that's what we're going to be working with. I think that's plenty for now. The utilities, we have a whole bunch of other functions that we have on here, so on and so forth. Windows, just an easy way to navigate between all the windows you have open. Help, they actually have tutorials that you have on here. I think depending on what version, if you go into help and tutorials, you actually get to SPSS website. If you guys are not happy with my explanation, I can give you tons of links on YouTube and other places and stuff like that, where you hear another voice explain the same stuff. Sometimes it helps. No, it really helps sometimes to hear this from a lot of different people, or the repetition alone makes it sink in. Okay, the other thing that I skipped over was charts. There's a few versions here. One is Chart Builder. One is a Template Chooser, so on and so forth. For the most part, we're going to be sticking with Legacy Dialog. And under Legacy Dialogs, just meaning that this is the way it was in the previous version. Okay, in the previous version, you would go in here to make a bar chart, a 3D bar chart, line chart, scatter plot. Who knows what a scatter plot is? If you have scatter plot is one axis, gives you one number, the other axis gives you another number. So for instance, if you're looking at height and weight, if the x-axis is weight and the y-axis is height, right? If a person weighs 200 pounds, okay, you go across 200 to 200 pounds. And if he's 63 inches tall, you go up to 63 and you put a dot there. And that location is 200, 63. Both of those are numerical variables. So just like when we're dealing with creating a chart, we're also interested in understanding what the variable type is to generate the right kind of chart. Okay, just want to get an idea of it so I don't go too long. Okay, so now I'm going to open up we're actually going to work on a database that we have available to us. We're going to open up that Titanic database. Now, the only thing is that Titanic database has a problem. I didn't give you an SPSS data file for Titanic, right? What did I give you? Gave you an Excel data set. Yeah, that's in here. Okay, I'm going to open it up first. I'm just going to double click on it, open it up in SPSS. Okay, so what do we have here? We have, if I go all the way to the top, come on. I go, oh, look at that, John Jacob Astor, right? Okay, we're going to talk about him. Anybody know if he survived or not, Titanic? He didn't make it, right? He didn't make it back. Okay, so at any rate, a lot of rich people drowned on the Titanic. Now, at the top here, now I know that this looks like a name, right? But it doesn't say at the top here, maybe it does. Oh, there it is. Okay, we got it. We have it. And I'm still not all the way over to the left. Am I? I guess I am. Okay, well, that used to say name, I guess, at one point or another. This is passenger class. This is age. This is gender. This is whether or not they survived. Okay? So we have some data here, right? In the vertical columns, we have our variables, name, passenger class, age, gender, and whether or not they survived. Okay, so we have nominal, numerical, nominal. Those are our variables. 0 and 1s are nominal. 0, and in fact, I think passenger class may even have more than just 2 classes. It might have 3 or 4 classes or something like that. Problem is, I don't know what these are just looking at this table, do I, in Excel? Because Excel has no way to store that information unless you actually type it in. SPSS is much more flexible. We can tell it if you wanted to let it know that 1 represented first class, you'd have to replace all the ones with first class manually. What you have to do is tell it the value 1 first class. So we need some sort of mechanism. So I'm going to open up a code book. We have that in the background. I'm going to minimize that. And if we go in here, that little text file called codebook is right here. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's a problem. Let me open it in, yeah, a notebook or something, right? Open with Notepad. Nope, still does it. You know what the problem is? Problem is it doesn't recognize the carriage returns. Okay, I'm going to use it this way. Normally this would be, I should be able to convert this, no? We're smart people here. We should be able to figure out how to do this. Send to, create a shortcut, WinZip, open with, give me Microsoft Word. I should be able to open it with, I don't want to choose the default program. Why is it making me do that? Here's Microsoft Word. How about WordPad? See what that does with it. Oh, that's better. WordPad works. Okay. If you're on a Mac, you won't have a problem with this because the Mac automatically adds line feeds after carriage returns after line feeds. Okay, so what do we got? The name is the recorded name of the passengers. Most of your data, that information is going to be private, right? So chances are you're going to have a code number there instead of a name, right? And that'll be referenced. That information will be hidden away somewhere, so you don't know who that particular patient is. P class, that's the passenger class. 1 is first class, 2 is second class, 3 is third class. Only 3 classes. Age is age in years, okay? Gender, 1 is male, 0 is female. Somebody remember that. Your job to remember that, okay? One is male, 0 is female. Survived, 1 is yes, and 0 is no. Okay, so now we know what this data represents. So now we're going to go, if you guys have it open, we're going to go into the variable view. Excuse me, we're not even in SPSS yet, are we? Okay, we need to get this information to SPSS. Sounds like a lot of work. How many people are in this data file? See how many people are in this data file. You know how many passengers there were? Okay, good. Okay. There are people that are, Titanic junkies that could tell me right off the top of their head how many passengers there were on there that day. Okay, so now we want to import this data file into SPSS. Now, anybody happen to remember if we had the that row of data, we have to make sure that SPSS interprets it correctly. So I'm going to go into SPSS, open it up. Now I can close the other. I'm going to just open the data. I can close these other files behind it, or I can just say, let's go to File. Now, I should have warned you about this. In Excel, if you still have the data file open, you need to close that data file. SPSS is very particular. It doesn't like. So now you can go, once you've done that, you can go up to File, whether you have this open or not. You go up to File, Open, right? This is the way we open a data file. Open Data. And we're going to navigate to the desktop and into Lab Session2 or wherever you have it stored. Whoops. Into that folder. And let me see, where is it? I don't see it. Well, the reason why I don't see it, if I look down here to files of type, it's only looking for .sav. If I click on that and I go down to Excel, now it's showing me Excel files. You got to tell it what kind of file it is, so it will find it. You can, if you're not sure, you can just click on here and say the files of type, and notice how many different kinds of files that it can import. Sure. Okay. All right. I'll try to open this again. I'm gonna go to File, Open, Data. Okay, and now I'm gonna navigate to where I know I have my. Okay, I happen to have it in this folder called Lab Session 2. Okay. Now I'm looking at it. I want to open my Titanic file, my Excel file. I don't see it in there. Do you see the Excel file in there? North Carolina first. I don't see it there. The reason why I don't see it is because if you look over here, the only kind of file it's looking for is .sav. You could have 50 files in here. It's only going to list the SAV files. So I have to click on that. If this was turned on, it would work. I have to click on that and change the file type that it's looking for. Okay, and notice all the different kind of file types that it will open. And since I know that this is Excel, I could just click on Excel and it will appear in this window. I can actually just go down here and go to all files. And now all the files that are in that folder are visible. Right? It won't open all the files, but they're all visible right now. Okay, everybody caught up to me here? We okay? Nope, okay. You see how things are going? Don't say anything nasty about the administration because the mic's on. If you right click on it, it'll say save file and save it to the desktop. Okay, so go back to Blackboard. Okay, so you go ahead. You guys can go ahead and open that now. Okay, so I'm gonna go to that Excel file, Titanic Excel. I'm gonna double click on it or open it. So click open. Okay, now when it comes up with a window, in that window, the little checkbox, read variable name from first row of data. First row of data has a variable name in it, right? I want to leave that checked. If the first row of data, if I uncheck that, it will think that those names belong with the rest of the data, right? If I uncheck that and the first row of data is real data, not the variable name, I'll cut off or lose one of the pieces of data. It'll try and use them as the variable name. Okay, so you got to give it the right answer to that. And notice it's telling me that the data goes from A1 to E1314. Okay, it's exactly the area that we know that has numbers in it. The other thing that you can do in here, it says worksheet. Sometimes in Excel you can have more than one worksheet, right? You notice that on the bottom of an Excel file, you're going to have, like worksheet 1, 2, 3, and you hit the tabs and change between them. If you have a file with more than one worksheet, you can switch between them here. Okay, so this is set up just the way I want. I'm going to say okay. Okay, and if you're good or lucky, one or the other, doesn't matter which. This is SPSS. And at the top, I don't know what happened here. The N and the A got truncated for some reason in the Excel file. But yeah, so it thinks the data is me. That variable is me, passenger class, age, and so on and so forth. And we know now we can switch over to our variable view. How many lines am I going to see in the variable view? 1,300 cases, but only 5 variables. So I'm going to go into the variable view here, and okay, I'm going to actually go in there and edit that so it makes some sense. I'm going to put an N and A in front of that. Okay, so it's name. Okay, don't care about that. Okay, so now while I'm here, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to notice it says it's a string because it saw its names, right? It interpreted it correctly as being like letters and names and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tell it, I'm going to label that name a passenger. Okay, and I'm going to call the next one. What would you call that? Class, I guess. I guess. Yeah. Yeah, travel class. Notice we can have spaces in there, makes it a little bit more convenient. And then I'm going to put in there I'm going to repeat the with the variable and call it age. And next I'm going to say for sex, I'm going to say gender. And for, I misspelled it, that's okay. And for survived, I'm going to put outcome, right? Whatever. You can make something up. Okay, so now some of these variables I can further code. I can tell them what the variable means. Passenger name, no sense in giving it values because each one's got its own value. Travel class. Well, now I can go in here and I can tell it that a 1 means first class. And I'll click add. Hard to work up here facing away from the board. You guys have it easier. And 2 means second class. And make sure you click add, otherwise it won't take it. Can't click OK. You must click add before you're all done. And 3, I'm going to call steerage.
You only need to do it in one cell and it applies to all of them, correct?
That's correct.
But you could have different valuable labels in each cell. If you're doing this super complicated, is there ever an instance where you would have?
You'd probably have a different variable in that case. Okay. You know, and you'd code that variable. Right? Because if you separate it, it's going to be, I'm going to call that steerage for whatever reason. I don't even know if it was called steerage then or what steerage actually means. Okay, but I'll call it that because it sounds interesting. Yeah. So age is a numerical variable. I'm not going to put values in for that. Now gender for sex. What does 1 represent? Remember?
1 male.
1 is male? Okay, 1. Add. Male. Click add. And 2 is female. Oh, 0 is female. Okay. And you got to look careful with that because that alters what your analysis is, right? If you get that wrong. Oops. Last name. What happened there? Oh, you're right. See, I just warned you about that, didn't I? And I'll click OK. And then finally for survived. Okay, for what was 1? And 2 was didn't survive. No, 0. And click add and OK. Okay, so I've coded this data. So now if I go back to my data view, I can see as it happens right now. Let me see if I can't move this over. As it happens right now, the value labels are turned on. So it changed all the numbers over to what they represent. If you don't like seeing that, or you like seeing the raw data, you can just go up here to view and turn value labels off. It'll go back. But it'll remember that that's what those things represent. I'll leave it turned on for our own information. Okay, so now let's actually do some analyses using this data. And again, let me check my time. Good. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. Okay, let me check with these guys online. How are you guys doing online? You guys keeping up with us there? Yes, I saw one yes there. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, so now let's do some interesting analysis on this. Okay, what might be some of the things hold on to that thought. How many more? That's right? That's something. Let's do that. Let's go to Analyze, right? Descriptive statistics, and that's going to be frequencies. Okay, and what's the variable that we're interested in working with? Gender or sex. And it shows that if you hover over it, it'll show you the label. It's making a liar out of me. If it's properly installed, if you hover with the arrow, it'll say sex, will say gender, what the label is, and so on. Or this, but it's not doing it here. Okay, so now while I'm here, I'm just going to look in here by statistics. This button over here, it's got options in it, and the options say analyze for nothing, right? So we're going to tell it to analyze for the mean, the median, the mode. The mode's the most frequent value, but that's not going to. Hang on a second. What am I doing wrong here? And you let me get away with it, right? You got to stop me when I do this stuff, okay? Yeah, you can't do that, right? That doesn't make any sense for us. So we're not interested. Let me make sure I turned it off, yeah. That's why it wasn't turned on by default, because it knows there's a categorical variable. You don't want to do that stuff. Oh, you know, I didn't check to make sure it defined them correctly, but it appears that it did. Okay, see these little bubbles here? That represents categorical variables, where a scale, like a ruler, represents a numerical variable. So you can get a look at what SPSS thinks it is. If it's got it wrong, you can go to the end there and correct it. Okay, so gender, we're just gonna have it do a count. It's gonna do a frequency, see display frequency tables. It's checked off. So I'm gonna say okay. Okay, let's see what we got. Remember, we didn't close our output table here, so our analyses from before are still here. So I'm going to bring that up. You can't see that too well. Hopefully you've done it also. So you can see it on the machine, right? You know, I'm going to do it a second time just so you can see it on mine. Descriptive statistics, frequencies. I'm just going to say okay, so it does it a second time. So you can see that the tables that came up here, the number of valid cases, 0. There was no something like that. How many females were there? 462 females. There were 851 males. 35% of the passengers were females. The ratio of males to females was 2 to 1 on this boat before it sank. Is that a surprise? Probably not, because most of the passengers are probably in second and third class. What was the guy's name? Now, yeah, I know it was DiCaprio. I mean, what was his name of the movie? DiCaprio really didn't drown. What was his name? Jack, or whatever his name is. He was there because he was escaping a poker game and he was coming to America for work and stuff. That's why it's more males than females, probably, because the bulk of the people on here were in the class. Okay, and we actually take a look at that, right? How many people were in first class? Do exactly the same thing. Nominal variable, analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies, and this time let's remove gender. Now we could have put both of these in here at the same time, and it would have done both at the same time. And let's see passenger class and see what that is. Okay, let's see what we got there. I'll repeat it again so I can get it to display higher. Descriptives. And, what did I do wrong? Analyze, the statistics, frequencies. Okay, here we go. All right, let's see. 24% of the passengers were in first class, 21% in second class, and steerage was almost 55% of the passengers. The majority of passengers were third class passengers, right below the upper decks. Okay, so let's move on with that. Okay, so now let's see. We've looked at how we might work with nominal data. Another way we might look at nominal data is to display it graphically. Let's go to graphs. A couple of ways we could have done this. Descriptive frequencies. I think if you go in here to charts, you can ask it to produce a bar chart. Okay, and now it will produce not just, or even a pie chart and so on and so forth. Now it'll automatically produce for us not just the calculations, but it'll also produce a bar chart. You can see they're very graphically. Right. Okay, so let's go up here to analyze. We could also have done it this way. Graphs, legacy dialogues, bar, and this time let's take, how about survival? Okay, we didn't do that, did we? That's also a nominal variable. I'm going to put it in there. It should give us 2 bars. how many people survived, how many people didn't. Anybody have any ideas? Let's see. Oh, looks like you're right, 2-1. Okay, and the table would have actually given us the real numbers. We'll give us the percentages, yes. It came up automatic. Well, in this function, it comes up automatically when we do a table, right? But you can actually that's actually something that you can. It comes up by default. That's something you can turn on and off as well. We'll get into how we can manipulate these a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to frequencies, except this time passenger survived. Move that in here, and I'm not changing anything over here, right? I'm just going to click OK. And the table tells us that 65.7% did not survive. Gives us the frequency, the number of people, the percentage out of the total, and of course, since there's no missing data, it comes up 100%. Right? And the cumulative percent, if there's different columns, different rows, those are the cumulative percent as well. Okay, so now let's take a look at something else interesting. Okay, how about let's take a look at some numerical variables. What's the age of the passenger? What's that? No, I know how many years? Oh, over 100 years. 100 years recently, right? Supposed to, they have a ceremony every year at the top where it is supposed to arrive here. Okay, so let's go to analyze. Let's go this time, go to descriptive statistics, except this time we're not just counting, we're actually doing an analysis. So I'm going to go to descriptives. Okay, and I'm interested in the only one that's a numerical variable is age. Now you would think SPSS being a really expensive program, except for you guys get it really cheap for a temp. You get to borrow it really cheap anyway for 6 months. That it would lock these out so you can't make a mistake like that. But that's one of the issues with SPSS. Very powerful software. You could put the wrong variable in there and try and calculate an average, and it would be meaningless. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go into options. Well, options automatically, this time we see stuff checked off, so we know we're on the right track, right? SPSS thinks this is probably something we should be doing. Mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum. Well, it's going to click variance. Remember we calculated variance manually before? I'm going to click range. That's going to give us the youngest passenger and the oldest passenger. Standard error mean, don't worry about that. That's way advanced for us right now. And I'm going to click OK. And this time we're going to get much more detailed analysis. Well, maybe not that much more detailed. We're going to get a more detailed analysis. I'm going to repeat that so I can scroll it up. Descriptives. And OK, it remembers the last setting you used. OK, so if I take a look at this, OK, we didn't have ages for all the passengers. We only had ages for 756 of the passengers, apparently. I didn't check this. The minimum age was 0.17, infants. There were infants on board. The maximum age was 71. I'm guessing you didn't make it 72. And the mean age, the average age, was just a little over 30. Okay? And I'll bet you let's do something really interesting. Remember we saw there was a function there called explore. I'm going to take a look at that right now. I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to use that explore function. Analyze, descriptive statistics, explore. Okay, it comes up, there's a few more boxes in there though. Okay, there is a box here at the top, dependence list. Well, I figured if it's at the top, it's always going to have something in it. So I'm going to put my variable age in there. That's what I'm interested in. Okay? But there's another box here called factor list. What do you do when you factor? 5 times 10. 5 times 5 times, so you break it up into different parts. Break up the ages into different parts. Let's take passenger. let's see what the average age was for all the different passenger classes. I'm going to put that in there, and it's going to redo these calculations for means and for only the first class passengers, second class passengers, third class passengers. Let's see if it works. Cross your fingers. Okay, and I'm going to say just statistics for now. Okay, I'm going to do a little button down there, both. I'm going to say statistics right now. Oh, now look at this. Look at all the stuff we got here. Okay, let's see. First class, the average age was 39.6 something. Second class, the average age was 28. And third class, or steerage, the average age was the youngest. Right, and the youngest, right? So, and it also gives you the standard deviation. The minimum was about a year old, and the maximum was 71 years. That was the old guy. I knew the old guy had been there, right? Oh, actually, it was a 71-year-old there in second class also. For steerage, 65 was the old, 55? 55 was the oldest guy, right? Okay, interesting, right? There's something there. Okay, so now I could, if I wanted to now, I could look at this graphically. Okay, so I'm going to redo this analysis. Descriptive statistics, remember, to get all that extra information and be able to split it up, I went into Explore. Okay, I turned off display charts and statistics, plots and statistics. Statistics, we just checked off. We wanted descriptives here. That was already checked off. Plots, it's got stem and leaf plot checked off. I'll tell you what that is when it comes up. I'm going to click off histogram. Remember, histogram's going to I'm going to click off histogram as well. Click continue, and I'm going to click OK, and now we're really going to get a whole bunch of information. Okay, so what do we have here? First class, 226 people. Second class, so it's the steerage, 318 people. A percentage of the, let's see, missing. These were missing. We didn't have the ages for those guys. Okay, the means, and so on and so forth. Basically the same table we got before we turned on the graphs. See what we get after this? Here's our histogram. That represents the distribution for first class passengers. This represents the distribution for second class passengers to the left. And this represents for the distribution for third class passengers. Okay, and I see some skewing here, don't I? Right? I see some skewing down at this end and some skewing at this end, right? Some unusual number of younger passengers, unusual number of, and these people, these older passengers will skew things a bit as well. Okay, so now stem and leaf plot in the old days before we went to if you look at this, this is just 15. 7. And so on. Oh, 21, 22, 23. These are all people 20 and 24. These are all people 20, each one is by digit. But basically, if you look at it, it's the histogram on its side. Right? Kind of neat, right? Back in the days when we didn't have, now why they kept this, I don't know, but now, I don't think anybody would actually use it. So now, one of the things we looked at was a very useful plot called a box plot, okay, which used those percentiles. And I asked it to create, well, actually it creates it automatically. If I come up here, I have histograms for groups. Okay, now you call these things either whiskers or feathers. I don't know. I prefer feathers. I don't like whiskers. I like feathers. I like birds better than people anyway in general. But that's a whole other thing. Right? So these whiskers represent the youngest person was the middle bar over there. What do you think the middle bar represents there? That dark one. That's the median. You guys cheated. You read ahead. Most people say that's the mean, right? As it happens, it isn't the mean. It's the median. The reason why that's important is because this is showing us percentiles, right? And the 50th percentile means not the average, means half of the people are below, half of the people are above. That's the median, right? So that's right? This box here represents the interquartile range. What does that mean? That means 25% of the people are between this feather and the bottom. So half of the people are in that box right there. That's called the interquartile range, the middle quartile range, 50% of the people. Gives you a feel for what the distribution of this is like. It looks pretty symmetrical to me. The mean is in the middle, right? The median's in the middle. That's where I expect the mean to. Looks like if I had a histogram, it would look pretty normal, right? Pretty bell-shaped. Now this one, not so much, right? This is bigger here than it is here. Here to the lower end, right? So there's anybody know what these extra circles are for here? Those are outliers. Those are people that, in other words, in these two classes, most of the people were younger, but there were a few much older people, but they were unusual. SPSS decides on what to call an outlier. It says that that's the formula that it uses, and which you can alter. It's going to call an outlier. It's not saying necessarily you should remove that data or not use that data, but it's saying you need to examine that, to examine if there's a reason why that data is so far out. For instance, if you got data, you're collecting data, you're taking blood sugars or something like that, somebody comes up with a blood sugar of 5,000 or 0, you say, oh, that person, that's got to be a mistake, he's dead, right? So he couldn't have possibly walked in here with blood pressure of 0, right? So somebody made a typo. That's an outlier. You got to, why is that 0? It's either, why is it 60? Plenty of people walk into an ER with a blood pressure of 60, right? But so that's not an outlier. It's low, but it's not an outlier. But somebody coming in with a blood pressure of 20, you got to say maybe there was a mistake there. That doesn't sound right. At any rate, so that's why you have to examine those. Pretty powerful. So let's take a look at the survival for these different things I want to cover, and that is how we're going to take a look at we need a table. That table has to give us the passenger groups in the rows and whether they survived or not in the column. So I can see passenger, first class, how many survived, how many didn't survive. Second class, how many survived. Steerage, how many. So we need to get that table or that tabulation. So I'm going to go up here to analyze. I'm going to go into descriptive statistics. It's considered a descriptive statistic. I'm going to go to crosstabs. And look, it says rows and columns. Pretty simple, right? So in my rows, I want to put my class. In my columns, I want to put whether or not they survived. Okay? Now, I'm going to do something interesting here. We're running out of time, so I'm going to do this. I would have stretched this out a little bit to play around with a little bit. But I'm going to go in here to cells, and I'm going to say to give me percentages by rows. So it'll give me the percentage of people in each row that are in the survived and not survived. Okay? I would have gone back and done a little bit more manipulation here, but I think I want to do it in one shot here. So I am going to close this. I'm not going to close this. I'm just going to say OK and see what we get. Here we go. Here's our table. I'm going to do this again, just bring it up to the top so we can point at it. Okay. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, it didn't do the percentages. What happened to my percentages? Did I turn it off? I didn't click it. Okay, I'm rushing. Statistics. Nope, that's not what I want. I got the wrong one there, didn't I? Yeah. See, like I said, when I rush, I really screw stuff up. Cells, percentages by rows. Continue. I must have hit cancel by mistake. Say OK. I'm going to do it a second time. Analyze statistics. Those tabs. OK. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay. First class, 129 did not survive. 193 survived. 40% survival rate in first class. Second class, I'm sorry, 60% survival rate. We reversed it. By the way, if you wanted to get survive in this column and did not survive in this column, SPSS decides whether it's the top of the row or the bottom of the row or the left or right based on alphabetizing. So survive must have been a 0 and survive must have been a 1. If you wanted it the other way around, you would have recoded it the other way. So you get the column where you want it. How can we do that? Remember, we could transform the variable. Oh, change all the zeros to 1, change all the ones to 0, and now we'll recode it. Okay, you can make a new variable where 0 represents survived and 1 represents didn't survive. Down his steerage, 19%. He's hanging onto the door, like at the end of, when the boat sinks, right? So it's information that we got from here, right? And this isn't even beginning to get into the interesting statistical analyses and tests that we're going to do to be able to prove differences, say, between one drug group and a placebo, or between one intervention and no intervention, and so on and so forth. This is just, I hate to say it, the tip of the iceberg. Okay, good night, guys. I think that's enough.